Alrighty, so we seem to have worked out the technical difficulties with Alice, and everything is good to go. Um, Hello, everyone. Okay, so we seem to have worked out the technical difficulties. Everything should be fine now. Thank you guys for your patience. Hello, Alice.
Yes, I made
Yes, we figured it out.
it.
Thank you,
Oh,
everyone, for your patience.
good.
It seemed that there was just a little bit of glitching going on from the Instagram stuff, but
Yeah, we made
everything's
it.
resolved. We're here. We're ready to
Yes,
get started. Alice, how are you?
I'm good. I was a little bit nervous because it didn't work out. I was like, oh, shit.
Oh yeah, no, but
couldn't,
that's
couldn't be true.
it comes with the territory of it being an Instagram live.
Yeah.
I've done this plenty of times now, so you
Hmm.
would think by now I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah.
And nonetheless, every once in a while something happens, and it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, but
But everything is good here. So, as
yes,
you can
and
see, the sun is
everyone
shining.
fortunately gets notified when we come online, so
Yeah.
everyone should be getting reminded, and we see a lot of people joining. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming online. Glad you guys want to participate. So, uh, first, I guess I just want to give like a brief introduction to the show.
Yeah.
Um, and to you, and then we can go ahead and get into the questions.
Good.
So, Alice de Kruijs, Master of New Age Portraiture, which is a bit of a mouthful of a title, I admit,
Yeah.
is a show that basically explores Alice's um, journey through portraiture. She works in a variety of different series through photography, and basically what I wanted to do as a curator was really hone in on looking at the entirety of all of your series and
Yeah.
picking something in particular that really spoke to me and struck out to me.
Mm.
And for me, it was really the portraiture that just really stuck out and was something that you do with such excellence throughout all of your series,
Mm.
even when the subject matter is completely different.
Yeah,
So it was
true.
kind of like a thread that you could take along your whole career.
Mm.
And as such, I was able to use pieces from your series back in 2017 to up until now with Paradise
Yeah.
Island. So that
Yeah.
was kind of
Yeah.
what the goal was.
Yeah.
And Alice, you want to maybe give a little bit of an introduction to yourself? I know we've spoken during New Year's Eve
Mm. That was a
briefly,
short
but I
one.
kind of want to. This is, I feel like, your moment to really speak to like your
Mm.
work with the camp and what you do as a photographer. So if you want to just give an intro and then we can get into the
Yeah.
questions, I think that would be great.
Yeah. So I think it's now since 3 to 4 months I've been with the camp, and I've been. I always have like a warm heart for photography, even like when I was a youth. So this has been with me for a long time already. And at one point in my life, I decided to make it like a professional move. So I started a new academy for photography, and I became very well known with conceptual photography, which I really love
Mm.
because I'm not a good singer. I cannot act, but I can make good photos, and through my photos, I tell my story. And that's what it is. So it can be, for me, a story that I feel it needs more attention. It can be a personal, like almost an issue that in this way of photography, I can show myself, I can visualize it, I can express it. And I think in this kind of way, to make it always personal and always conceptual, then for me, photography started to really give me a lot of beautiful things, including a lot of great people to meet, including wonderful exhibitions, gallery representations, and I feel very blessed with this. And I'm also feeling very good for myself, so I can express something that is truly me. Um, and that's what I do,
Awesome.
shortly.
Yes,
Yeah,
shortly, of course, in
yeah,
brief. And I really appreciate that introduction because I think it's just important, like, even though this is about your exhibition with us, I see it as both sides, an introduction to the exhibition, an introduction to you and to our followers. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving us a little bit more background on why you
Yeah, and
chose.
I'm feeling great to have this exhibition, so very thankful
Thank you.
too.
I'm glad. I'm very flattered. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. And I just want to remind everyone that's listening in, if you have any questions that come up, we do have a question box down low, and you can always add whatever question you'd like, and I'll touch at them on the end.
Yeah.
So question number one. How do you position your work in relation to the cultures and the peoples you show in your work? And how do you feel that that relates to the genre of portraiture in general?
Well, for me, like I already mentioned a little bit, once at one point I get like inspired, and it can be like an exhibition, it can be indeed a certain culture or a certain story. So at one point I'm like, okay, it keeps in my mind, and I feel like, okay, I have to make a series of it. So at this point I start to do my research, and it can be about the culture, but it can also be a story that I want to express, and the culture is part of it. So it depends in which degree it measures. Well, of course, and then at a point I have like in cultures, especially indigenous culture, because I'm so like inspired to see a culture that's totally different than a Western culture. So, and once that's the point, I really grab it, and I'm researching, and then I put everything together, like the models, or visit the culture, go and travel, and this is the way how I do it.
Yeah,
And
and
for portraiture, yeah.
I totally see that in-depth analysis. You're mentioning how you get really passionate about a specific culture and you visit it
Yeah.
and you do a ton of research. Like, the way that that translates into your work is like so palpable in my experience, because it really, when I see an image, I feel like I'm getting an entire story about.
Yeah, it is about the
the
story
culture,
always.
because it seems to come, even visually, it shows that it's coming from a very informed place and a respectful and an appreciative
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
So that's
And
something that really I really
yeah,
appreciate.
that is really true. And concerning the portraiture, I think for me, portraiture is such a fundamental piece of my work, because through the portraiture I can express, and they can express the story. So in this way, I think, yeah, I also make some still lifes sometimes going with the series, but the portrait is always the fundamental image in the series, always.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so if I have to categorize myself as what kind of photography, I would say I'm like a portrait photographer, for sure.
Yeah, I see that as well, and I almost feel like the pieces that are more still lifes or landscapes are like complements to the portraiture, and that
Exactly.
you could almost see your entire series as one big portrait.
Yeah, you could
Think
see it
about it
like
as the
that.
portrait of like the culture that you're looking at, or the specific entity you're looking at. Like,
True.
for example, if family members, it's really telling a story about your grandmother's life, for example, starting at her birth and ending in her death.
Yeah, and this project actually was a little bit different than my other portraits, other series, because this is such a personal series,
Totally.
which I never thought I would make, because it brought me back to my roots, to my family roots, with all kind of old pictures, stories. So this is a special series for me as well.
Yeah, because it's about your family, and it's almost about you in a sense, and the way that you relate to your grandmother. So I think that's really beautiful as well.
Yeah.
Moving on to some of the other questions that we have prepared here. How do you reconcile the purpose of material culture of the Pacific Islands in your work?
Well, how I usually work, this question was a little bit difficult for me, so I looked it up a few times, like what is a good answer. But for me, I use a lot of symbols in my work. So
Hmm.
when I make a portrait, I'm not thinking about in the sense of material or materialistic, but I try to make symbolic gestures
Hmm.
representing that culture. I think that's the best way to express it like this. And I think if I'm doing that, I'm accomplishing. I'm accomplishing the photo that I want to represent for this series, and that's
Okay.
the way how I always work. And for example, with the Paradise Island, I unfortunately couldn't go there due to the COVID,
Hmm.
but I really tried to do different processing with water and on top of each other, and in this way, in a symbolic way, I tried to express it. And I think because my portrait or my work in general, not only my portraits are not like very scream in the image, but they are more softer
Yeah,
colors, and I think that gentle symbols are really putting the details on the image.
definitely. And I think so maybe a better way to have formatted this question um, is to say, instead of saying material culture, to look at symbols, because I think what you touched upon is that you're not looking at material culture, you're looking at the symbolism. And
Yes.
be it through material culture, be it through the people you photograph, be it through
Yeah.
color,
Yes.
you're trying to achieve a story through symbols.
Yeah.
And so that's really at the crux of what you do, not necessarily the material culture portion of
No,
it.
and also what I found very important in those cultures that for even their ancestors basically lived the same way, and this keeps on inspiring me because we are moving in a world basically with so many digital platforms, with so many different things every new month basically. So I appreciate it very much that those cultures are there, and in some people they say it like they are primitive cultures, but for me they are not at all. So, and yeah, that's how I see it.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think like it's beautiful to see in a world that like is so, especially in Western culture, so obsessed with what's new, what's coming next, the things that are
Mm.
changing and bettering and so on and so forth, to see a society where things don't necessarily have to change so consistently and can
True.
and be preserved in a
Hmm.
sense, and build an identity by being preserved.
Yeah. I
So
have
what?
actually one. I'm just now I understand the question a little bit better, but I have one series. It's called like the spiritual dances of Burkina Faso. It's
Oh
another
yeah,
series I made in 2018, and I
also
collaborate. Yeah.
also in the exhibition, by the way.
Oh.
For everyone that's listening, also in the exhibition.
Yeah, true. And there I photographed some masks, and the masks are
Yes.
original, and they are actually from a museum in the Netherlands, but they come from Burkina Faso and Nigeria and this region. So if you say like a material thing that you photograph, that's definitely one.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I
totally.
still love those photos actually.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think with you, whether the use of material culture really depends on the series you're doing. So, like you mentioned, Burkina Faso totally is
Yeah.
pulling from material culture because it's all about the masks and
Yeah.
the way that they're incorporated in the photo. Whereas maybe a series like, for example, Planet of the Afar was more about the landscape. And so you're pulling more from landscape than material objects. Black and White
True.
Project was more about portraiture and the idea of contrast between colors. So yeah, I think you, like you mentioned, Burkina Faso totally hits the mark on material culture. Others are using different things to achieve
Yeah.
some images.
Yeah. True.
So shows that you are very adaptable depending on the thing that you're trying to
Yeah.
communicate. Um, how did you become so interested? Speaking of like your different series and the different cultures that you look at, how do you become so interested in like ethnographic study through other cultures? Where did that come from, do you think?
Um, I think a little bit from my father, but I remember as a youth, really like eight years old, I'm seeing like these documentaries on the television about India, Varanasi, and I'm just so drawn to that. I don't know. It's a world that I don't know, but it's a world that sounds so interesting. It looks so interesting when I was a youth. So I remember when I finished my high school. Is it my high school or no? At least my high school and university. The first thing I wanted to do, I actually graduated, and the day after I was in the plane. I have to get out of here. I want to go see the world. I want to go. I see it so many times, and like I want to experience it. So I've been living in India for 8 months, in Ghana.
Oh,
In
wow.
Ghana for a year, and some other experiences. Yeah, which is great. So and this
Very,
gives me a lot of inspiration. Actually, during my trip in Ghana, I saw a real spiritual dancer, and that gave
cool.
me the inspiration. Even like it was 12 years later. Then I thought I have to make a series out of this because it's still in my mind, and I was so like, what is it? What was it? So I started to research, and it goes like this.
And just blew up from there. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
totally relate to that fascination with other cultures on a personal level, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why I personally love your work so much. You know, I lived in Mexico for 3 years. I lived in Spain. I've lived in Paris as well, and so like I've always had a fascination. I studied African history mainly for my major.
Ah,
So like
I love
that
Africa.
was one of the things that struck me about your work too, is that it comes with this sense of almost like wanderlust
Mm-hmm.
and fascination with people that come from a different background from you, which I think is really healthy, and it's a good thing to have,
Yeah.
because it demystifies the other to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like the planet of the Afar. I didn't plan to make a series there, but I was traveling in Ethiopia, and at moment I always want to go to the Danakil Depression, it's called, but then okay, we could go there, but there's no trees there. It's like bloody hot. I've never been in a hotter place than there. And then I realized that there are actually a tribe is living there. It's like, how can you live there? There are no trees. There's nothing there. It's bloody hot. And well, okay. But there was this tribe, it's the Afar, and actually they've been there since the start of humankind. It's like the oldest tribe ever. And they managed to live there, to have a culture there, to have a life of walking with the camels to collect the salt and everything. So inspiring and
Yeah,
unique as well.
fascinating. Really, it's like really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to pivot and ask you a question, especially when you're photographing these different cultures and studying on them and stuff. As a photographer that captures subjects of a different race from time to time, what do you have to take into consideration when you're shooting?
Well, first of all, I think everybody who is creating images through paint, through sculpture, through photography, I think we all have to be aware of what we are making and what we are publishing in this world. So for me, I've always been very aware the message that I want to come across, and definitely one of them is yeah, I have the Rastas, is one love. So for me, it's very important to have respect with different cultures, different type of people, but especially with also the race. And I love Africa. I've been in like 9 different countries, and I love the African culture in many ways. But then, for example, I always think if you make like a series about Paradise Islands, for example, the people, the area let's say it like this, the islands that are focused on, there are like dark-skinned people living there, like the Aboriginals from Australia. So for me, it would not make sense to use like white models. You know, you have to be.
Of
So in
course.
this way, I use black models or yeah, women, especially.
Yeah, I agree. I think another big part of your work is that I think you always come from a place that's respectful and that's like honoring the people you're representing, which I think is really important, especially in light of all the discussions that are going on about, you know, cultural appreciation versus appropriation and so on and so forth. I
Yeah,
also feel like your work comes from an appreciative place, it comes from an informed place, and it shows real deference to the cultures that you're
yeah.
representing. So
And
that's
for me, it's also
uh,
important that they are showing the way how they are posed on the photos, that they are showing strength and also pride.
yes.
I don't want to make images about people that are insecure or that are whatever. Also, my stories are not like that, but I also don't like to give that image.
Of course.
That's
Definitely.
important. And I know many times people do that, not even on purpose, but like I'm saying, like we all know how much effect the media has, for example. You
Hmm.
know, and these are also images, different type of images, but there are images and they're telling a story, and people make a certain opinion based on those images that they see every day.
Yeah.
We know both of us know that there are like millions of images every day by so many people.
Yeah, and you can't help but make assumptions based on the different
No,
cues
true, but
because it's human nature to some
yeah,
degree.
but giving another perspective, I think that's an interesting thing to do. At least for me, it feels good for me as well. That's
Yeah.
I think important.
To inform the viewer in a positive, respectful way. I think, yeah,
Yeah.
that's important. Um, I want to pivot to your most recent series,
Mhm.
just because I think it's a really fascinating series. It's a series that you had some considerable limitations based on the way you normally work.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to give you the opportunity to really discuss Paradise Islands at length. The first thing that I thought was really interesting was the fact that you were able to integrate something that's pretty global and a very important subject matter, climate change. And so,
Mhm.
did you, like, when you were going into the series, did you think, oh, I want to do something that in some way relates to climate change? Or was it
No,
instead
no.
subject matter, you realized that it was a very big deal and that you needed
Yeah,
to?
exactly. Yeah. Well, the first time I was thinking about a series about the Pacific Islands because that's what it is. Well, of course, when I think about Pacific Ocean and the islands there, I see like the blue sea, I see the nice beaches, the palm
Mhm.
trees, the nice weather. So paradise. That's the reason why I call it Paradise Island. But I found out during my research because my first idea was to make a series there to show the unique culture because their cultures are very isolated, and every small island have their unique culture, and it is about to disappear because the new world, the digital world, is entering there. So this is like yeah, on a how do you say on a difficult area, difficult time right now for them. But then I did my research indeed, and the biggest problem they are facing is that global warming, because the sea level is rising. We all know that, and
Yeah.
everybody knows that climate change is going on, but many people are talking about it, but it's actually happening already because islands are disappearing as the water is rising. So this is even a bigger damage to their culture because they basically have to move at one point, move to another island, meaning to go to another culture, leaving their culture behind mostly. And this is so damaging because the coming years, so many islands will disappear, and it's not just there; it's in so many places in the entire Earth. So I think this is such an important message. I couldn't deny it, not mentioning it. So I was like, okay, then I have to go for this.
Yeah.
So this is how it started. Yeah, and
I really love that kind of the process behind that series, because when you look at it, you almost would have thought like, oh, she maybe was thinking of discussing climate change and then added the cultural layer. You really looked into the culture and thought, wow, this is a
yeah,
really big problem. And then beyond that, I think it really tells almost a warning sign
yeah,
for people, because that is something that is going to be coming, and it's not going to only happen to people on remote islands in the Pacific Ocean. It's going to be happening in the US, it's going to be happening
yeah,
in Europe,
yeah.
and it's going to result in mass migrations of people because land is just going to be inundated. So it almost plays like it's almost like an ironic title that becomes to some degree. It's like
Yeah.
but really not really, because it's talking about something that's very not
Not
paradise.
paradise, but it looks like paradise. Still, if you go there, if you go to an
Oh,
island,
of
even
course, yeah.
though the beach is almost gone, you still think, oh, this looks like paradise. But ask the people, the islands are already flooding, and then, as you can imagine, they are so isolated. They don't have a lot of supermarkets. They, it's not like that. So they grow a lot of their own food traditionally, but their land is flooding every time, every few weeks. But then with the salt water, it destroys everything.
Oh my
So
God.
you can imagine the impact, and there are I think there are like it's like 7 islands or something. They are about to move to other islands already,
Wow.
and we don't really know or hear that much about it, but it's
That's
happening.
that's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how did you find out about like how did you hear about them? Like, what initially drew you to Paradise Island as as a
Mm.
series?
Well, actually, there's a Belgium photographer. She called
Okay.
Sanne de Woude, if I'm correct. She made a series about Island of the Colorblind. It's a series about it's one specific island in the Pacific Ocean where the people are not they are blind, so or mostly blind. This is like,
Oh my
I don't
God.
know, some gene or that's there. I don't know too much about the project, but I like the imagery and I also like the message. And then my mind was set to like Pacific Ocean and a total different photography, total different subject. But there, I think I had the first mindset or focus on this area.
Very cool. I
Yeah.
like the fact that like you were able to draw inspiration from maybe a colleague or another artist and then really do something completely different, because that
Yeah, you always
really
have to
sounds
do
like it
your
has
own.
nothing.
Never copy.
Oh no, of course not. But
I hate
totally,
that.
but
No, do your own thing.
it like sounded off an
Yeah,
alarm. Like, hey, I need to
yeah,
check this. Uh,
definitely.
do you feel that there are parallels between the photographs and your own life?
Um, in my own life, not really, to be honest. No, I just like to express the stories that come to my mind. So yes, they are like important for me, but where I can see some resemblance, like is like with clothing, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the type of colors also. Yeah, I think that's it. Basically, what I do find is very important is also women empowerment. And it's not that I don't like men or something, not at all. But for me, because there's still all over the world a lot of women that do not have equal opportunities as men. And for me, it's important to give them, through my photography, like a message, like the pride, self-securance, and everything like that. So this is very important to me, and also in the images. Yeah.
So, do you want to maybe talk a little more about the significance of women in your images and why that's important to you in your photography?
Yeah, I tend to focus more photograph more women than men. And I think it's that I can relate to them. I think that's a very important message. I also see that through other artists' works, you can relate to them, and I think that can also happen like when you're from a different culture, maybe you're African or you're Asian or Cuban, and you see a certain work, you can relate to that, and I think that's very important. And for me, those are women, because I think, yeah, we can have our own strength and our own pride and our own opinion and own this and own that. So this is for me very important, because I really feel like that. I traveled a lot in my life too, and I saw differently, and this frustrates me. So I think through my images, I want to make a point. Yeah.
Very cool. So it's equal parts relatability with the subjects and also the message of women empowerment.
Yeah, definitely.
That's very cool. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about your process. Just to pick your brain about this. First of all, with regards to Paradise Island or really any of your series, what are the steps you take when you're making your research before you're taking the images and whatnot? What are the different things you do?
Well, like I said before, I'm a conceptual photographer, meaning that I first create a concept, then think about images. So when I got my first inspiration somewhere, I don't see my images already. I don't want to, because I strongly believe that when you create conceptual work, your work is stronger in sense of storytelling. So what I do, I get inspired by something, could be anything really, and then I keep it in my mind for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then if like this inspiration keeps on developing in my head, then I'm like, okay, I have to write this down. So I write down like, okay, this is my concept, this is what to express, and some details. And then I'm like, okay, I want to do this. And for example, when the subject with spiritual dances, like I said, I've been to Ghana, I've also been to Burkina Faso, and then I saw this guy that have like, yeah, they say the mask, and he was performing a ceremony. Didn't know what it was then, but it kept somewhere in the back of my mind. I was like, okay. And then at one moment I was like, I want to know what it is. I want to make a photo story about it. I don't know how it looks like, because I'm not going to Burkina Faso now. But I wanted to do it in a different way, combining old elements with new elements to keep it a more like a spicy combination. So I start researching their culture, their ceremonies, why they do it, when, how old, are they still doing it, all those questions. And I was like, okay, now I understand, which is really cool, because I always had that thought, and I was at one point like, ooh, now I understand. So, and then from there on, I started, so then I have the concept, yeah? So I have my concept, I have my research, that's it. So now I have to find models, I have to find masks somewhere, I don't know where. So, so then I had a nice neighbor, he's working in a museum, in the African Museum in the Netherlands, and he said, oh, maybe contact network, it's like maybe you can check. So then I had to go through a commission of people if I can photograph all the masks, because all the masks in their museum are very traditional and very, how do you say, sensitive, in the sense that it can break easily. Yeah. yeah, so, but I could photograph them in the museum. And then later on, I make photos of the models, and in this way, I come to an end. And then the models, I put them on just modern blazers, because to give, like what I mentioned before, I want to give this spicy combination that you see. You see the mask and you see the blazer. And for example, with the interracial issue for this, this is like based on Burkina Faso, so there must be black people there or African people. So I have a good friend, and he's the guy with the very long dreadlocks. He's a good friend of mine. Yeah, he's a good friend, and I asked him, "Can I photograph you?" And he's like, "Yeah." So this is this is the process. And this is, I just put this example, but yeah, this is how we work. Like in Paradise Island, same. Family members, same. Only the Planet of the Afar was differently. This is more like a documentary photography. Yeah,
definitely. So that's pretty much all the questions we had. I did have some more saved up, but we went so beyond it that it
really?
would bring them on.
I could talk for ages.
Yeah, I know. It was a great discussion. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find your contact information?
For sure. You can follow me through Instagram. It's Alice de Kruijs, a little bit difficult name. Alice de Kruijs Official. There you can find all my images, videos, everything. And then I have a website. It's www and also alicedekruijs.com. And there you can see all my works, all my series from the last 5 years, and publication, exhibition.
Incredible.
Whatever you want to know.
And if anyone wants to learn more about our series with our exhibition with Alice, which is on the camp website, also on Artsy, Art Logic, and Artland, and Art Space.
And all of them are for sale.
Yes, of course. And also feel free to DM for any questions or concerns. We're happy to discuss with anyone. Alice, again, thank you so much for speaking with us. And
thank you too, Mario.
Bye.
Bye-bye.